This is when I realized we were in for something that was much more than just a video game. Now, there are a few defining moments that set the tone for what your adventure in Super Mario Galaxy might entail, whether it be the dramatic kidnapping of Peach or your not so dramatic arrival into space. There's chaos and commotion, but there's also a sense of wonder and curiosity. But what's so special about Mario flying to the Comet Observatory? Well, the Comet Observatory is a very special place, as it is not only home to Rosalina and the Lumas, who are the cornerstones of this game, but it is your home. I mean, just think about it. When has Mario ever had a true home? But it goes much deeper than this, as the Comet Observatory not only connects you to planets within the universe, but it connects you to the idea of the universe. We as humans are not able to comprehend the universe, as it consists of all of space and time, but even if we don't fully understand the universe, we still have this desire to explore everything around us and ultimately accomplish what is most important to us. I like to think that this is what Super Mario Galaxy is all about. Despite this game being released in 2007, the beauty of Galaxies still shines just as bright as it did back then. Your journey starts off with a beautiful little introduction to the world of Galaxy, but once you start making your way towards Peach's castle, everything starts to fall apart. Yet these scenes of Bowser kidnapping Peach are just so cinematic that I don't even have the time to think about what is happening because I'm too busy admiring this world that Mario has found himself in. Mario is then flung off of the airship and finds himself waking up on this small and desolate planet in which he meets the Lumas for the first time. In just the first 5 minutes of the game, the tone and atmosphere is completely different from anything we've ever seen in a Mario game. But when you start traversing across these mini planets, you are met with that sense of adventure that is usually present in your ordinary Mario adventures, and you even encounter familiar enemies such as the Goombas. Not only does this section work well as a tutorial, but it is a fantastic way of introducing you to not only the story, but the entire game itself. Speaking of which, this game has a story which is almost unheard of in a mainline Mario game, even 16 years later. While the main story is to of course save Peach as well as the universe, there's a beautiful side story that most of us still hold with us today, and that is the story of Rosalina and the Lumas, which is conveyed not only through dialogue, but through Rosalina's own storybook, as well as the amazing soundtrack, but I'll get more emotional later on in the video. Now, I've already briefly touched on the Comet Observatory, but I want to talk a little bit more about why it is both not only special, but genius. First and foremost, the Comet Observatory just works in almost every single aspect. Now, I'm not saying that things being illogical in video games is a bad thing. I mean, if anything, that's the appeal. But when it comes to the Comet Observatory, it just makes so much sense. Within the Comet Observatory, there is a terrace, fountain, kitchen, library, bedroom, engine, and garden. But you don't know all of that upon arriving at the Comet Observatory. However, as you collect more stars, you unlock these parts of the Comet Observatory, which not only creates for steady progression, but allows for you to appreciate the observatory more, as having access to the entire observatory from the beginning of the game would be the equivalent to having all of Princess Peach's castle unlocked in Super Mario 64 at 0 stars, or all of Delfino Plaza in Super Mario Sunshine at 0 shines. Alongside that, the observatory obviously fits the theme of space, but it gives you a sense of home and belonging, which is really hard to encapsulate in something as grand as space. Not only do the various rooms emphasize this feeling of home, but Rosalina's dedication to creating the Comet Observatory, as seen through her storybook, just makes it that much more special. After Rosalina's mother turned into a star, it's very clear that she was longing for a home and ultimately wanted to escape the existential feeling that is all too common when faced with being in, well, the middle of the fucking universe. But Rosalina and the Lumas aren't the only thing that make the Comet Observatory feel like home. Just look no further than the Toad Brigade or Luigi himself. So not only is this a home, but it is your gateway to the rest of the universe. Now, as much as I love the rest of the universe, it would simply be too much to cover all of the planets within the universe, but it wouldn't be a Super Mario Galaxy video if I didn't go into detail about some of them. In this game, there are usually two types of galaxies that you'll encounter. There will be smaller galaxies, such as the Sweet Sweet Galaxy, in which its design serves more as a linear gauntlet, and then there will be bigger galaxies such as the Honey Hive Galaxy, which offer a more sandbox-like feel. But then there's a third type of galaxy, this type being one that merges the two designs together, like Boy Base Galaxy. This dichotomy between galaxy designs creates for fantastic pacing, and you are left feeling deeply immersed within each of the planets, as opposed to getting bored of a certain style of design. On top of the design choices, Galaxy's relation to setting is more diverse than ever before. It's no secret that Mario games love to spice up each and every location you go to. I mean, Super Mario Sunshine is the only mainline Mario game that I can think of in which the setting is relatively consistent. But Super Mario Galaxy takes this setting diversity to a whole new level, and it would be an understatement to say that this diversity works to the game's advantage. Sure, we got our typical lava and water levels, but we also have Sling Pod and Toy Time Galaxy. After all, there are no limits in space. Once you collect the first Grand Star, you are met with the first real planet in the game, which is none other than Good Egg Galaxy. While the galaxy itself isn't too insane, it cements itself as a very iconic start to the game. While some qualities of the galaxy pertain to older Mario titles, a lot of it introduces new concepts as well as the mechanics the galaxy has to offer. We see new enemies, we see these launch stars, we see these star bits, we see all these different planets, and above all, we see the gravity of space come into full fruition. There's multiple boss fights to tackle, whether it be Dino Piranha or King Caliente, but you'll also discover that there's other objectives within the galaxy, whether it be feeding this Luma star bits or finding Luigi on this roof. All of these things and more are just a small glimpse into what is to be expected as you progress through your journey, and it leaves you with a desire for more. Then there's Honey Hive Galaxy, which not only has a more sandbox-like theme, but a more cohesive theme. It is here where you are introduced to the B power-up, which is a sentence I thought I'd never be able to say, but here we are. Using the B power-up, you are able to explore more of the galaxy, and it surprisingly makes for some fun platforming challenges, which makes sense as to why we see it make its return in Gold Leaf Galaxy or even Honey Climb Galaxy, which is just a 1-star linear gauntlet galaxy. While both Honey Hive and Good Egg Galaxy are both pretty upbeat, Space Junk Galaxy is anything but that. Upon arriving in Space Junk, you are quite literally met with junk in space that you have to use to progress through the galaxy, which makes it feel so lonely and forsaken. While there are sections of the galaxy that strive away from this somber atmosphere, whether it be these airships or this boss fight against Terrantox, the other parts of the galaxy, alongside the soundtrack, make you feel isolated from the rest of the world. If any planet were to give Mario an existential crisis, I would put my money on it being this one. Then there's Ghostly Galaxy, which also emits an eerie energy, but in a way is dramatically different from Space Junk Galaxy. Instead of having an existential crisis in the depths of space, you're spooked in ways that are a bit more grounded to what we could comprehend. There's ghosts, spooky houses, and dangerous terrain. In fact, the ways in which this eerie energy is conveyed to you is kind of a throwback to Luigi's Mansion. You even encounter Luigi, who is in typical Luigi fashion, absolutely scared for his life. But there are two ideas that, in my eyes, make this galaxy all the more unique. The first idea is the Boo power-up, which, similar to the B power-up, is another completely unconventional yet iconic power-up. This one is pretty self-explanatory as you quite literally become a Boo, but I personally think it is cool because this idea of becoming an enemy would be completely revamped and expanded upon 7 years later in Super Mario Odyssey. While Flying Mario and Spring Mario are the only two other new power-up additions, the scarcity in power-ups makes sense as there are not only some returning power-ups, but the power-ups aren't the main premise of the game, so if a power-up is going to be included, it's going to be one with purpose, leaving no room for bad power-ups. The other idea that made Ghostly Galaxy special for me was this section. You see, this isn't just your ordinary haunted house, this is a house that is literally being consumed by the universe. Not only is this section visually fascinating, but it creates some some serious platforming challenges. I mean, just look at how they expanded upon this concept in Matter Splatter Galaxy. While Ghostly and Space Junk Galaxy make you feel lost in space, galaxies such as Beach Bowl and Gusty Garden do the complete opposite. Starting with Beach Bowl, you are placed in this tropical hideout in which you are surrounded by friendly penguins as well as the sea that is all yours to explore. This level makes you forget that you are in space, as you are encapsulated by this euphoric feeling of being out in the sun and water. That is not to say that there are less euphoric parts of this stage, but you get the idea. Then there's Gusty Garden Galaxy, which has gone down in history as one of the most iconic levels in all of Mario history, and for good reason too. The level features some very clever planets, the gardens are rich and full of life, and floating through the air is just breathtaking. And how can I talk about this level without mentioning its soundtrack? The Gusty Garden OST might as well be the modern day Claire de Lune of Nintendo music, because there is no escaping this masterpiece of a song. The track fills you with a sense of optimism as you make your way through the Gusty Gardens, and you could really feel the passion that is exemplified through the orchestra. And finally, there's Freeze Flame, Melty Molten, and Toy Time Galaxy, which are some of my favorite galaxies as a result of a combination of the positive qualities I've gushed about when talking about previous galaxies. Melty Molten Galaxy serves as the perfect crossover between linear and non-linear gameplay. Freeze Flame Galaxy makes very clever use of the ice and fire power-up, and overall does a fantastic job at executing any and all ideas, and the Toy Time Galaxy exudes uniqueness, but also uses the toys as moving parts of the levels in ways you wouldn't expect, which is a testament to Nintendo's outside of the box thinking. But there's one type of galaxy I purposely haven't mentioned yet. One type of galaxy that is home to some of Super Mario Galaxy's most memorable moments. The Bowser Jr. and especially the Bowser levels are not only some of the most challenging galaxies to embark through, but they are some of the most iconic galaxies within the entire game. For example, Bowser's Dark Matter plant puts your skill to the test like any other Bowser level would, but it also uses Galaxy's quirks to its full advantage to create an intense experience. The shifting gravity, the dark matter, and even the climb up these stairs makes Bowser's territory feel menacing and threatening, but these galaxies as well as the other ones wouldn't be nearly as good if it weren't for their unforgettable boss fights. Now, Mario games have never been known for excelling in their boss fights, but Super Mario Galaxy is one of the only Mario games that genuinely excels in this department. While you fight Bowser 3 times, each fight not only gets progressively harder, each fight feels rewarding and refreshing, as opposed to other games in which the fights will get boring and repetitive before they've even begun. This same sense of reward can be found when fighting Bowser Jr. in his various contraptions, or even when you are refighting King Caliente, who is a rather simple boss fight, but nonetheless still a very distinct battle. Outside of those boss fights, there are a few battles that are simply just astounding. The first being King Fin, which you encounter in Bonefin Galaxy. This one stands out to me as it uses the surrounding planet as an area to fight King Fin in. While you have to be careful of King Fin, you also have to be cautious of your environment, as you need to pay attention to how much air you have, while simultaneously making sure that you're able to dodge any and all enemies, so that you can use your shells to do damage to King Fin. Despite Bonefin Galaxy being a one-off galaxy, this boss fight is a roller coaster, and I couldn't think of a better place for an underwater boss fight. Then there's Ghostly Galaxy, in which you fight Boulder Guys. This rock formation of a beast is surprisingly one of the best boss fights I've ever seen in any Mario game, and that's for two reasons. The first reason is that this boss connects to the theme and mechanics of the galaxy itself, which is something that most bosses in this game do, but it is especially prevalent in this one. As you make your way through Ghostly Galaxy, you use these black boosts to blow up certain parts of the stage. So what better way to incorporate this idea than to use these same boosts to destroy Bouldergeist himself? Given that Bouldergeist is an extension of this galaxy's central mechanic, you will be rewarded for having a grip over that mechanic, as if you are able to hit Bouldergeist himself as opposed to his hands and rocks, you'll be able to defeat him much quicker. The other reason as to why I enjoy this boss battle so much is just the fact that it is so out of left field, even if the fight itself is perfectly in line with the theme of the galaxy. While a lot of boss fights in this game aren't predictable, this one in particular is just something I never expect to be in a Mario game. It reminds me of when you fight the dragon in Super Mario Odyssey, and I'm just a sucker for when Mario games decide to just randomly surprise you like this. And while I briefly mentioned Bowser Jr., the coolest fight has gotta be Bowser Jr.'s robot reactor. While I wish the fight lasted for a bit longer, this behemoth of a robot is always a treat to look at and think about, and the potential to expand upon this concept was so huge that we see other contraptions to this caliber in Super Mario Galaxy 2. While it's no secret that the planets are truly remarkable, Galaxy takes itself to the next level with its story. It's one thing to craft a beautiful atmosphere, but it's most certainly another to tell a beautiful story within that beautiful atmosphere. And while Rosalina's storybook is the crux of the lore within this game, other qualities such as the soundtrack and even just the visuals make the story that much more powerful. Speaking of which, I know most of you are familiar with Rosalina's storybook, but if you aren't, then the story goes a little something like this. One day, a girl spots a rusted spaceship holding a small star child. This girl would be none other than Rosalina, and the star child would be the first ever Luma to meet Rosalina. The two chase after star bits and comets, with their goal being to find the Luma's mother, but the mother of the Luma is nowhere to be found. Rosalina then starts to dream about her own mother before ultimately waking up with a wave of sadness as she realizes she'll never be able to see her own mother again. As Rosalina and the Luma long for a home, they end up creating their own, and along the way they meet some friends and build a family. This home would be the Comet Observatory. While this story is short, it is nothing short of exquisite, especially for a game like this. While Rosalina and the Lumas could have easily just served as one-off characters like some of the others in a Mario franchise, their amazing stories and backgrounds make some characters that we'll never forget. What's even more amazing is the fact that this was all written in one day by none other than the director of Super Mario Galaxy himself. I might have not fully understood the story when I was a child, but that's part of the beauty, because when I read the story again, it all made sense to me. It was like re-listening to the lyrics of a song that you hadn't listened to in 10 years. You might have liked the song at first, but you definitely didn't understand it. But upon re-listening, you appreciate the song even more because you actually understand the message behind the lyrics. I like to think that this is what the story of Super Mario Galaxy is like for most people like me. What makes the story even better is the soundtrack, as the orchestra that Nintendo was able to put together created for one of the most iconic soundtracks in all of video game history. Any emotion that you can possibly think of is evoked through the soundtrack, and done in a very tasteful way at that. Toy Base Galaxy conveys a sense of suspense. The Bowser levels encapsulate a sense of urgency. Space Junk Galaxy fills you with a sense of wonder, but also a sense of emptiness. Loop-de-Loop quite literally nails that minigame feel, and tracks like Gusty Garden are known for their unyielding optimism. While a good story may have an impactful plot, a great story will convey a powerful message or leave you feeling emotions you might have never felt before. This is exactly what Super Mario Galaxy does. Now, at the very beginning of the video, I talked about a moment at the beginning of the game that I viewed as impactful, but I think it's time that I talked about what might possibly be one of the most quintessential moments in this entire game. This would of course be the events that occur after you defeat Bowser. The planet that you and Bowser are on explodes, but then it turns into a black hole and starts sucking everything around it, but then that's when the Lumas come in. While I'm confident that Nintendo has the abilities to surpass what Super Mario Galaxy did, I firmly believe that there will never be another Super Mario Galaxy. Also, can we talk about how you can literally save Luigi as Luigi?